This journal saw me through one of the biggest bullet journaling slumps that I have ever had, and yet it is still surprisingly full. Hello again team, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin and welcome to my bullet journal flip through video. Today we're going to be doing a flip through of my 7th bullet journal, which took me from January to the end of June 2020. This video is going to be a little bit longer than normal because as we flip through I'm going to be offering some comments about the pages, things I liked and didn't like, things that worked or didn't. But hopefully you find today's video insightful and enjoyable. For any important pages or sections in my journal, I do have links in the description box below to the videos that they are associated with. But for now, let's jump in. Starting with the inside cover, we have my school timetable, my key, and my name. I actually found this key in particular quite helpful because most of these Tombow colours, the numbers have rubbed off because I use them so often. So having a quick reference of them up the front here was quite helpful. These are also the colours that match my Papermate Inkjoy pens, which I use in my power sheets. So it was helpful to have this colour match reference here too. So in the Archer and Olive notebooks there isn't actually a space for an index, and I decided to leave one out because honestly I don't really get that much use out of it when I do have one. So I decided instead to start my journal with my 2 words of the year, consistency and diligence. I didn't really find myself looking back at this page at all, but at the start of the year I did find it helpful to set up, just so that I kind of approached 2020 with some clarity. So I had each of the words, I had the dictionary definitions, and then just a little blurb about why I'd picked those words. The year at a glance, I did quite like this. I did actually use it more than I thought I was going to, in particular because I put down the week numbers beside each week. When it came to my calendars for the future log though, as soon as stuff started getting kind of moved around because, you know, COVID, did not really find myself referring back to these at all. So a whole bunch of wasted pages kinda, because they just didn't get used. After this we have my etc page, which is essentially like a very much future log, so beyond the scope of the life of this journal. So you can see it includes the last 6 months of this year and then anything beyond that. Again, didn't really use this one that much. This page for my monthly tasks I also found that I didn't really check in with, which is why I haven't used it in my current journal. I like the idea of it, I just never came back to fill it in. After this we have my 20 in 2020 page and my milestones and memories page. And as you can see, I didn't even end up finishing off picking 20 things to do in 2020. Despite that, of the 8 that I did pick out, I did get 2 of them done. And of the other 6 I did make progress, so I at least planned the holiday for South Korea, even if we didn't quite make it there. I almost got to 5k and I got 3 out of 10 books done, so that's not too bad. Considering last year I don't even know if I read 1 book. My YouTube schedule worked well, I liked having it up the front, but then I found that it kind of made the YouTube schedules that I had for each month a little bit obsolete. Which is why in my current journal I've decided to put all of my schedules for YouTube and Instagram at the start, and just leave out my monthly social media schedules. My growth page I liked, I just don't see why I put the second half of the year, because I already knew that this journal was not going to last that long. Something to keep in mind for next year. My weight loss spread worked well, even if my weight loss didn't necessarily go so well. And my weekly review tasks, I liked the idea of this one, but again I didn't really find myself checking back in with it. I think I'd like to do another version of this at some point that's a little bit more refined, but for now I haven't put it in my current journal. And after this we are on to January. In my journal for the second half of 2019, what I'd normally have here would be a planning page for the month coming. But in this journal I decided to put all those planning pages at the back so that I could have this space for a quote. Now the Archer and Olive was my first 160 GSM notebook. And because of that, I was really excited to try things like painting and watercolor, But when I started testing it out on the pages, I found that they buckled too easily, and I cannot stand it when my pages buckle. So although for January I was going to go with like a watercolor sky kind of theme, by the time I figured out that that wasn't going to work, I didn't have all that much time left to set up for January. So I instead went with a black and white Zentangles theme, with these printed headers. So we have my quote and cover page, and this quote, honestly, I was so happy with how it turned out. We have my monthly log and gratitude log, which, as happened with a lot of the pages in this journal, it did not get finished off. We had my habit tracker, which was all about my evening routine, and I had this little tip-in for a little key. Monthly to-do list, which you can see went super well, considering none of those things got checked off. My social media schedule, and a notes page. Now, I don't really feel like I needed to have the notes page and the to-do list. I probably could have combined those into one page, but they did both get used somewhat. Flipping over, we have the first weekly page. Now, at the start of the year, I was trying to do these little check boxes at the top of each spread, so that once I'd migrated all the tasks from it, I could check off the corner. Although I like the idea of that, it wasn't really something that I honestly found all that useful. I think it's probably because typically when I do my migration, I do it all at once, so there's no real need to check off that it was done, because I do it all at once and then never come back to it. Does that make sense? Anyways, for my weeklies in January, I went with a similar layout each time, just moving around the elements. So you can see we had a space for each day of the week, plus a little section for next week, because I miscounted. A running task list, and then some mini graphs, a leisure tracker, some notes, and then successes, challenges, and improvement sections. Similar again, so each day, tasks, mini trackers, successes, challenges, improvements. You can see that going from week 1 to week 2, I didn't like the wasted space that was at the top, so I moved the washi tape up so that everything in the middle here could move up a line. Week 3, similar again, except I swapped this section out for a packing list. And week 4, again similar, but moving around each of the elements. Then we get on to week 5, and this is honestly where my Bujo slump kind of started. You can see that I didn't even bother sectioning off this for anything in particular. It has a header with nothing written in it, and nothing written underneath it. I never finished off filling in my little trackers, and I didn't end up actually migrating any of the tasks from this week, thus the lack of check mark in the corner. At this stage, I figured it was just because I was getting to the end of the month and that I just needed a change of pace, something new. But what I found over the coming months was that sadly, my use of my bullet journal was very sporadic. I tried my hand at making a review spread because I used to like doing those a lot and I wanted to try and do it again this year, but as you can see, didn't really get filled in. And then we are on to February. So for February, my theme was pixelated games, or 8-bit games. So again, we have my quote and cover page, a much more simple quote compared to last month's. We had my Pac-Man inspired monthly log, and although this one took a lot of time and effort, I think it's really cute. In particular, I really love my little cherries and the little ghosties. What I didn't love about this one was the amount of space it left me to write down events for each day, but I do think it looks very cute. My habits and steps trackers. You can see with this one in terms of my bullet journal tracking, so getting in and actually filling things out, pretty much half of the month I wasn't in my journal. For the steps tracker, I didn't actually fill any of this out until after February. You can also see that I miscounted here and I left myself space for 28 days rather than 29, so the 29th had to go at the top. You know, now as I've had a closer look at this, actually less than half the month was I in my journal, because the kind of little bandit glasses on each of my little space invaders, they don't actually represent any day of the month. So you have to kind of ignore those, and then it's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 days in the month I was in my journal, so just over a quarter. Not great. My mood tracker was probably one of my favourite things from this month. So as you can see, it's Tetris inspired, so each of the different Tetris pieces has a different mood attached to it. And very much in general, the better moods are down here with the purples and blues, and the not so great moods are up here with the reds, oranges and yellows. You can see I also really fell off on Instagram posting in February. I did pretty good on YouTube. This page I had spare for something. I don't actually remember what I was intending on doing here. I think maybe I accidentally skipped it, I'm not too sure. So I decided to try and make it a kind of class tracker, so crossing off when I had things ready for each class, and then doing a full cross when that lesson was completely ready. But this lasted until about week 6 of term 1, and then didn't get finished off. Probably also doesn't help that we kind of finished the term around week 9 because everybody went into lockdown. But yep, didn't really use that one. So we had week 6 where I was still doing the little check marks, and this one was obviously Minecraft inspired. You can see though, very empty. Did not get into my journal, did not really use it. Week 7, very much the same, so not a lot of use on this one. I did have a packing list though, because this was the week of EOTC week, so we were out at the Marae. Obviously had to pack my bags to go there. Annoyingly, I forgot my toothbrush. Disappointed in myself. Week 8, I decided to try and trick myself into using my journal by doing stars, because I love doodling stars. I think that this layout is really cute, except for that star there, which escaped where he was supposed to be. I really like this layout, but yeah, did not use it. I got to Sunday and I felt guilty, so I wrote a whole bunch of stuff down, but nothing in there. For week 9, tried to take it back to something super simple, but again it was one of those things where at the start of the week I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna use it, let's populate the weekly. And then at the end of the week I'm like, oh great, I'm guilty, I really need to populate the weekly. But everything in the middle, not so much. And then we are on to March. Now March is probably one of the most favourite themes that I've done. I think that a lot of the themes that I had in this journal I actually really loved. So it was probably a bit of a shame that I got into such a Bujo slump and didn't really use the pages. But as you can see, my theme for March was dream catchers. So again, starting with a quote and then my cover page. We had my monthly log, which I went back to a vertical style because really I was just trying to try anything to get myself motivated to use my journal again. I also gave myself a mini calendar here just so I could easily see what day of the month was which day. And I really enjoyed doing the little decorative parts around it too. For my habits and mood trackers, I again went with dream catchers. I must say that I feel my mood dream catcher turned out better than the habits one. Just in terms of the outside border, I think that by the time I got to the mood tracker, I'd kind of gotten the hang of it. I also really enjoyed doing these gradient fonts. I think it was in March that I got really into gradients, and then I kind of carried that through for the next 2 months as well. We had my social media tracker, and then a page that was intended on being a month in review, but kind of just ended up being a media consumed page. Again, wasn't very consistent on social media in March. And then we're into my weeklies. So this is actually 2 separate weeks, so we have the first and the second week of March. As you can see, I was kind of more motivated at the start of the month. I did actually use this one, and then I got to the next week and thought, oh, I'll give myself the space for a long-running to-do list because I like those so much, and then I didn't use it. Sigh. I do really love the decorations in here though. I especially like this one. I think this is really cute. Going back to just a running task list here to try and get myself back into my journal. This is very much a recurring theme, just me trying things to get myself back into using my bullet journal consistently. I gave myself a meal plan spread, which I used somewhat for almost half the month, and then not for the rest of it. I like the layout of this though, I think it looks really cute. But I've also found previously that when I do my meal logs, I like to have all of one meal type very easy to read together. So like a column for breakfast and lunch and dinner and snacks. Whereas this one, if I wanted to look at all my breakfasts, I have to go this one and then that one and then that one and then that one. You can't nicely read them all together. And then we had a brain dump before I started the new month, along with this quote page that I did as part of my How to Draw Dream Catchers tutorial. Quite like how that one turned out too. And then we are on to April. So at this point, I'd been in a bujo slump for 2 full months, and I was not finding consistency in my journal at all. So for April, what I decided to try and do to convince myself to get into it was do a month of planning with me series on YouTube. So each day I filmed myself filling out my journal and something else, like a little tidbit. And honestly, that was hugely helpful. It was time consuming, but it was very helpful. It was also doable because we were on lockdown, so I was at home with not a lot to do anyway. Which is also kind of ironic considering the month that I'm at home with not very many plans is the month where my bullet journal was the most full. As you can see, my theme for April was bamboo, and all of my colour palette was greens and yellows. So we had my monthly log, which I kind of turned into more of a memories log, because, again, didn't really have a lot of plans. This one I actually quite liked. I think it's quite cute to look back on. We had my mood tracker, which I don't dislike this page, but I would have liked it if I had have made them a little bit more decorative, like maybe put some leaves in there or something. But it certainly works to record my moods. We had my gratitude log, which I really love these pages. I like trying all of the different styles of lettering and little doodly bits and stuff like that. And then we have the productivity tracker. So this was something that I tried new in April, and I really quite enjoyed it. I found that it was nice to, at the end of the day, just jot down all of the ways that I had filled my time for the day. Plus, going with that whole love of gradients thing, I love the gradients down the side, and I love the gradients within each day as well. One thing I didn't like about this one though was that because we had the key in the middle, you couldn't see the full header for the page, regardless of which way you put the Dutch door. So here it says Prue Tracker, and over here it says Productivity Dash. So that was something that I changed in May. We had my habits and steps, and I don't even know what I was thinking with my steps. I knew I was going to be on lockdown. I knew that I wasn't going to get a lot of steps in, yet I gave myself space to record up to 10,000 steps. Ridiculous. Quite liked my habit tracker. This is a style that I quite enjoy. Social media spread worked out well because I was in my journal a lot more, so I actually posted on Instagram because I bothered to actually look at the stuff I had planned. And then I had my media and memories page, which worked fairly well too. Wasn't thrilled about the layout of this one, but it did work. Monthly to-do list, which did actually get used, as opposed to my previous monthly to-do lists. I then had a meal log. I had a lot of trackers, because I was really just trying anything to get myself in here, and I figured, hey, I'm going to be checking in every day. I'm going to need something to fill out. So as I mentioned before, I prefer to have my meal types easy to see. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. Though you can certainly start to see the monotony in what I eat. Mini wheats, noodles, slice. This was for a video I did on ways to fill a monthly log, especially because, you know, everybody was stuck inside, didn't have a lot of plans. So I did a list of 35 different ways to use your monthly log. And then we're into my weeklies. So for April I was doing what I call build as you go weeklies, and I know that's just a fancy way of saying dailies, but I don't like dailies. Well, okay, maybe I do, considering how well this worked out. Of course, the very first thing that I did was write down Monday the 1st rather than Wednesday, so I started with a mistake, so it wasn't that bad doing mistakes going forward. What I did for each week though was try and change up the header that I was using in some little way. So you can see this week I went yellow through to green, whereas the week following I did green through to yellow. Only a small change, but it's still slightly different. Kept it fresh and interesting. I really enjoyed doing this more decorative style of keeping track of my tasks. I liked how using the small decorative elements I could fill any white space. This was the week that we went back to remote teaching, which is why it's a little bit less decorative, because I had a bit more to do. I really like the headers here, they're so cute. As I said, I was really into gradients. And then these are little printed headers, which I was just doing so that I could practice what I was going to do the month after. I can't quite remember why I went back to a traditional weekly for this week. I think maybe I just wanted a little bit more structure and a bit more of an ability to plan ahead. I mean, it does say here that I had a bunch of shit to do for school. And then after this we are into May. Doing an autumn theme has been on my to-do list for such a long time, and because May is autumn in New Zealand, it was going to be the last opportunity I was going to get for another year. Also, because I was obsessed with them, I figured it was another good opportunity to do gradients. So we have my quote and cover page, my monthly log with my favourite meme. This was one of the first times that I did a monthly log without drawing out the grid, and I quite like how that one looks. We had my scarf mood tracker, where the pattern on the scarf represents my mood. I would have done it with colour as well, but I really just wanted that gradient. My mini calendar habits tracker, and I really loved this one. I appreciated how easy it was to fill out, and I think it looks quite cute. Social media scheduler, and the page that I was calling my M&M and M&M's page, which stands for movies, munchies, music, and memories, but I also put in books and TV shows. One that I unfortunately missed out though was games, and I would have liked to put that one on there. We had the return of the productivity tracker, and this time I cut off the top of the Dutch door so you could see the header regardless of which way the Dutch door was facing. Again, very much love the gradient on this one. We have my meal log, again just with those 4 columns because that works well for me. You can see that towards the end of the month though, I did stop filling it in. And then a couple of new ones. We had the month of planning with me, which was a challenge that I was running over on my Facebook community group. So we had daily prompts all related to something to do with journaling. And so each day we'd share something related to that prompt. In May, I also had my Coke Zero tracker, which although the statistics were a little depressing, I do quite like how this tracker turned out. And then 2 additional pages, so things that I had to do or my monthly task list, and then I called this a someday maybe list, but really these are things that I do intend to do, it's just not probably going to get done in the month I'm writing it for. Does that make sense? And then we're on to the weeklies. I believe at this point I was back at school, which is honestly where the real test in terms of my bullet journal slump comes in. Part of the reason that I had my bullet journal slump towards the start of this year is because I was balancing my bullet journal use with my teacher planner. So going back to being at school, my use of my teacher planner started to increase again. I believe this weekly is one that I set up as part of a live as well, I think. Another weekly spread. I don't dislike this one, but I do not like the lettering that I did for each of these days. I was kind of trying to go with bounce lettering, and I'm not very good at it yet. I think it's certainly something that needs some more practice, So I like this one in theory, like I like the idea of it, but I think the execution could have been better. We had a somewhat ambitious weekly spread here. I really like the layout of it, but I didn't really fill it in at all until after the week was over. And even then, some things I didn't fill in at all. Do love the gradient though. And then a simpler weekly log, but again going back to that kind of not really using my journal. I do like the layout though. Now, this is probably one of my favourite spreads that I've done in a long while. I just really love the lack of white space. This one I made for an introduction to bullet journaling video. If you wanted to check that out, there is a link in the description below. So it essentially starts up the top here, so who I am, why I started bullet journaling, how I came to find bullet journaling, what it actually is, if you're going to do it, what you're going to need, how to do it in general, and then just some other information. I really like looking at this page. And after that we are into June. So June was the last month in this bullet journal, and honestly I loved this theme. Part of that probably comes from getting to use my gold watercolour paints, and part of it probably also comes from getting to do stars. But the theme for June was moons and mountains. So we have again the quote and cover page. My monthly log, where I again decided to do that kind of floating style of monthly calendar, so no grid lines. We also have my little decorative element on the side here, and getting to include a little more decoration like this was also probably one of the reasons that I liked it so much. We have my mood tracker and habits tracker, again with the gold. I love my metallic watercolors. And the mood tracker, honestly, I probably liked it a little bit more when it wasn't filled in, but now as it is filled in and it's got the metallic, I do quite like it still. I think I just preferred it when it was black and white with the touch of gold. But then it wouldn't be very useful, because I wouldn't have filled it in. We have my steps tracker, where each of the days and how many steps I got on them is represented by a little star, and then I connected those like a line graph. Again with the little decorative elements. So we have my social media schedule. We have my memories page, which didn't get used quite as much as my one in May did. And then a monthly to-do list. Into my weeklies. So this one worked quite well. I did actually use it, which is nice. This one I didn't dislike, but I think I would have liked to use a different colour in the clouds, and maybe make the clouds look less cartoony. This week I half used, I didn't actually end up using this part of the running task list. And then for the last week in this journal, I actually didn't set up a weekly. So I just put down some gold watercolour. Made a right mess of my desk doing it too. I'm pretty sure there are still flecks of gold paint in really random places because of what I did here. And then after this we're just into my back of journal pages. So I set up this one to brainstorm some ideas for my 20 in 2020 list, which is in my new bullet journal. I do need to transfer these things over, haven't quite gotten around to that. On this page I was playing around with my stencils from Erin Floto Designs. So you can see we have the cleaning schedule, we have this little one here, and then she also sent me a little stencil with hexagons and a little bee. It's quite cute. I have a blank page, another blank page, and then we're into my planning pages for each month. So as I mentioned, in January my intended theme was skies, and I wrote myself a little message. You know that feeling when you have a really clear and cool vision in your head of how you want something to look, but you can't get it onto the page? Rest in peace, dreams. So I had very good intentions, but they did not come to fruition. And I compromised, and I compromised, and I compromised, and I still couldn't get it to work. Thus the black and white Zentangles. So we have my planning page for my 8-bit pixel games in February. Planning page from March, April, May, and June. And then after this we have a list of things that I wanted to include in my next journal, and you can see I checked off the ones that did happen. We then have a very messy pen test page, which continues onto this side here too. And then the pocket at the back. Nothing too exciting in there. I've just got, I think, some scrap paper, a card from Erin, like her business card. Let's see. Oh, some little stickers, which never ended up using. Sticky note. Yeah, and that's about it. Despite having my reservations when I first started using my Archer and Olive, I actually really liked how my pages in this one turned out. Although when I was in my Bujo slump, I thought that maybe the Archer and Olive had something to do with that. I feel that was certainly more related to trying to balance maybe too many planners at once. And I really did end up enjoying using the Archer and Olive as my bullet journal. I appreciated the thickness of the pages, I really loved the fact that you didn't have any ghosting. Bleed through was actually pretty hard to achieve, unless you're totally ham-fisted and like used Sharpies or something like that. I'd say there were only two negatives for me about using the Archer and Olive. One of them was the canvas cover, or this kind of fabric cover, which seems to pick up scuff marks and dust a lot more easily than some of my other journals. And the second thing is that sometimes on pages, the dots on one page don't line up with the dots on the page next to it. This didn't happen a lot, only a couple of pages, but typically it just happened to be the page where I wanted things to line up, which was a bit unfortunate. With all that said though, this journal is going to go and join his friends on the shelf now, where I keep all of my past bullet journals. I'd be curious to know, do you guys keep your old bullet journals? Or once they're finished, have they served their purpose and you get rid of them? Thank you for watching, team. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you wanted to see more from me, feel free to go check out one of my other videos. Until next time, bye!